Hello, and welcome to the Rattling Pebble Review. I'm your host, Matthew Wildermuth, the poet and video artist and apparently web designer behind Eidolons. I wanted to make a brief video tonight to discuss a couple of things that came to mind during my recent conversation with Carolyn Emmerich on her podcast Folklore. During our conversation, someone had asked me my opinion of William Blake. I had said something like William Blake's technical abilities as a writer were not top tier, however near. I would consider him, by the way, a sort of second tier poet. And then I had mentioned that his passion, the energy of his writing, is really what elevated it. And of course I awed over his incredible mythos. Now, during this discussion, I also mentioned the impact he had upon James Joyce. Joyce in Ulysses directly quotes Blake a number of times. And also you can see the formatting, the characters, the method of telling the story, essentially, of Finnegan's Wake is very Blakean. I'm not going to go deeply into that today. Although that would be a fun conversation. Perhaps we'll do that in the future if there is interest. No, today we are discussing James Joyce because when I mentioned that Blake had had this influence upon Joyce, someone in the live chat commented something to the degree of, Joyce? Well, Joyce was a degenerate. That is the topic for the night. Now, for me, what comes to mind when I see this comment is ideas which are properly called aesthetics, the philosophy, you could say, of the beautiful. Although that's a really big dumbing down. I'm sure there's some people out there already annoyed with me. Anyhow. So, when I've read aesthetics and when I've thought about just what it is that happens when we experience beauty, what I have found is that we don't look through a book, like a novel by James Joyce, we're going to open up Ulysses, hoping to find reflected certain ideas with which we agree. That is not why we open a novel or a book of poetry, or why we listen to a symphony, or why we look upon a painting. No, we look upon a piece of art hoping to have an aesthetic experience. Now, we want to have an experience either of the beautiful or the sublime. Now, to define the beautiful and the sublime and divide the two, that again would be probably more than a whole episode here. However, I will lay out a brief summation of Burke's definition of the two. The sublime is that which is awesome, which is grand, which is beyond us, which makes us feel both awestruck and small. Whereas the beautiful is that which is clean, which is smooth, and is little in comparison to the sublime. For example, a flower is beautiful. A mountain is sublime. When we're reading a work of art, a novel, or poetry, we're looking to experience one of these two things. That's really the whole point as far as I see it. That's why I open books. Now, art which is designed, say a novel which is written mostly to meet certain ethical standards, is unlikely to reach the elevation of the sublime or the beautiful. And this is because the sublime and the beautiful are very, very rarely reached. It takes an artist's entire energy put forth into, in this case, words, to create something of this quality. The artist must not hinder himself, he must blindly create. Now that's a loaded phrase there, blindly create, so don't be too hard on me. But I'm sure you see what I'm saying in this context. So, what about Joyce? Does he meet our standards? Do we feel the beautiful and the sublime when we read James Joyce? I know I do, and I always have. The moment I picked up Ulysses, I was 18 or so. I was in the library waiting for a girlfriend to meet me. And I was picking through the books. I'd just discovered William Butler Yeats. And I'd fallen in love with Yeats, which is no surprise for a young man who's interested, a young boy really, who's interested in poetry to discover Yeats and fall in love. Yeats's talk of fairies and of innocence and innocence lost, and this sort of thing in his early work, by the way. Very appealing to a young man, especially one of my type who spent his late teens wandering through the woods around Ohio, thinking of love and beauty and this sort of thing, the loss of my innocence. Yeats really struck a chord. Anyhow, I was browsing through the shelves, looking at the Yeats, and I apparently found myself in an Irish section. Otherwise, I don't see how Joyce would have been so close to Yeats. But he was. I found on the shelf Ulysses by James Joyce. Now, the first time I cracked open that book that day, waiting for my old girlfriend to arrive at the library so we could walk around and kiss and hold hands and whatever, I was awestruck. It was a sublime experience. The sheer force of this man's art dumbfounded me. I struggled really to progress more than a couple of sentences, because the structure, the artfulness of every single sentence, every single phrasing, so intricate, so powerful, so brilliantly designed. I didn't want to keep reading. I wanted to keep going over these sentences to see what he did. And I did. And I think that, by the way, a lot of people never finish the James Joyce book. I have finished, personally, Dubliner's Portrait of the Artist and Ulysses, never Finnegan's Wake. Ulysses I finished only recently, by the way, after obsessing over it for a decade or so. And this is, most people don't finish Joyce. First of all, he's difficult. But secondly, because of this experience I'm talking about, reading his work is such a sublime experience. You just want to stay lost in that moment, and then go through it and try to understand how he achieved this. The facts of the story, the drama, they almost don't matter, other than they need to exist to provide context for the lines which you're, awestruck by. So yes, James Joyce passes the test. His art is sublime in his novels, and in his poetry it is beautiful. Now, as to his life, was James Joyce degenerate? You'd have to say mostly yes. Now, he was a family man. He had a wife. He had 2 children. He raised them. He was there. He never left. He never abandoned them. He managed to bring in enough income to keep the family afloat. Barely. And he often had to borrow and so on to do it, but he did it. He brought in the money. The family ate. They had a roof. He was a socialist. So I think that you'd have to say that yes, he was a quote-unquote degenerate for that. And also his art, one may say that his art is degenerate. It is of a degenerate quality because it displays the decline in Western civilization. The novel unravels in Joyce from something tight, as you'd experience in, say, Dickens, into something which is dreamlike. In fact, Finnegan's Wake is written in the language of dreams and seems to be, a dream realm of its own. And in that is very abstract, is is nothing that really resembles a novel like, say, a Dickens novel. So yeah, you could see the decline in Western Civ reflected in his novels. Now, what's interesting there, to me, is that Joyce lived during a period of decline, obviously, the modernist era. Joyce's lifespan, by the way, was late 1800s to the early to mid 1900s. He died just after World War II. So Joyce lived in the modernist era just before the great decline of postmodernism. Now, for an artist to live at that era, consider yourself in those shoes, in the shoes of an artist at that time. You see the civilization around you disintegrating. It is absolutely unraveling in every way. The values of the past have gone. The religion's fading away rapidly. Almost no intellectuals are Christian anymore at this point. The civilization is warring against itself. These brother wars, as we say now, are rampant. And on and on and on. Industrialization's taken its hold. You couldn't live in denial of this and just pretend like it wasn't happening and write, a Dickens novel at this point. You couldn't do that because you'd be lying to yourself. And if you lied to yourself, you wouldn't be able to create great work. It wouldn't be sublime. It wouldn't be beautiful. It would be a man lying to himself, creating paltry novels. James Joyce, in my opinion, took the best route available at that time. He looked to the unraveling of Western culture and decided that this is happening. We can't avoid it. It must be a good thing, something that must happen. And to evidence this, we can look to the influence he experienced from Giambattista Vico. Now, Vico was a philosopher who'd written a book, The New Science. And in The New Science, Vico details the evolution of civilizations. He marks them moving in a few eras. They begin, he said, with the heroic age. The heroic age is when the collective will of a people is coalescing. These disparate groups are becoming one. Their energies are moving together. Great themes arise, and these themes express themselves as heroes. And then Vico says that after this is a theocratic age, when the heroic age, the texts, the ideas, the themes which drew a people together are then held to be holy and are used to govern and rule, and are often twisted, and I think probably always twisted by those in power to keep themselves in power. And then Vico lists another great age, which is the democratic age. In the democratic age, the myths of the past are really unimportant. All that matters is sustaining the power of what had been built up through them. It's like if you've read Simulacra and Simulation, it's like the third order of a simulacra. The image no longer reflects the reality. It is an image of itself, used for its own ends. And that's the democratic age. Now, Joyce added another age to this, and I think he was correct in doing so. I think Vico missed something. For Joyce, the next age is the age we are in right now. The age of chaos. The age of barbarism. And this is the unraveling. The simulacra no longer hold their weight. The simulacra of our past. The heroic age is so far forgotten. the themes which drove a people together have been eradicated through time, and the people begin to unravel. So, Joyce is aware of our situation, and like I said, he decided this was essentially a good thing which must happen. You can disagree, but I'd be interested to hear your reasoning, because if a civilization is unraveling, it must mean that it wasn't held together properly in the first place. This is sort of a natural happenstance, something that is like a force of nature, which we cannot hold back. Our people, like others before us, will unravel. Our way of life in the past, few centuries will fall apart, and something new will emerge. We can't fight that. And to say that this is solely an evil thing would be to suppress the energies of your era. We have to move forward, and that's what Joyce was all about. Now, he didn't put forth many ideas of what he hoped would happen next in his books. He wasn't one of these socialists who, constantly focused his life and art around, the great socialist revolution and this sort of thing. Socialism for Joyce was sort of a conversational tool, honestly, because you'd barely see it reflected in his art. I mean, I've scoured these texts. I've not seen, evidence of this socialism, really. It's just something that I know of, honestly, because I read his biography. And if it wasn't for that, I don't even know if I'd know he was a socialist. Now where was I? So, Joyce's proposal that we accept the end was his way of saying we accept life. Life goes through stages. Our lives go through different eras within them. We pass out of childhood, and we pass out of adolescence, and we pass out of our era of being young parents. We pass into old age. We can't fight against these things. And we will die, and it would be foolish and suppressive of your own energies and capability of enjoying life to deny these transitions. And for Joyce, the transition of our civilization was just the same. Something which was going to occur and would be a good thing, because what is the secret of the black sun? Well, for me, the secret of the black sun, and this is a big hint if you're reading my poetry, this current series, the secret of the black sun is that it decimates, it devours in late winter, so that new life may emerge. And the new life, the next great era, is just around the bend. It's coming. Now, we don't know what it will be like, or even which people will be at the center of it. What we can do right now is to put ourselves in the best position possible. And that's really it. We can't fight against the inevitable. We can't try to go back in time. You see these goofy GIFs and memes around, we have to go back. We can't go back. It's gone. But we can create. We can create right now. If you love art, if you love philosophy, if you love your people, if you just love family, you have an opportunity right now to build something which may be the next great movement, because something, as I said, is coming. So, right now we work, we build, and we hope. That's all for today. I'll be back with another one of these soon. By the way, the next Eidolons video is coming. It's been very delayed. I found like any other good writer, I don't like deadlines, and I'd set myself these deadlines, of course. However, I found that the work I was producing for this next video wasn't up to my standards because I was trying to meet this damn deadline. So I took a step back and I rewrote the poem. It's finished now. The video editing is nearly finished as well, so we will have a new video likely later this week. So I'm hard at work every day writing and designing these videos. Nothing's changed there. Nothing's going to change there. The time frame may lapse simply because I'm an artist and I need my work to be right. Until next time, in the next video, I had a request to cover T.S. Eliot, the 4 quartets. So I'll do that here very soon. I'm going to try to release this next video first. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time.